When I was a kid, I was enamored with skate culture. I wasn't a skater myself, I never really claimed to be, but I was surrounded by the culture of it. I played all the Tony Hawk games, I wore the brands, I listened to punk music, and I watched Viva La Bam, all the normal shit. I always had a deep fascination with skating and the history of skating. And on top of that, I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller, and I always wanted to be one from an early age. Back in the day, I would rattle off my encyclopedic knowledge of film titles and actors and who wrote what film and who directed what film and all that stuff. I watched just about every movie under the sun, and it was probably early high school when I came across and fell in love with the films of Kevin Smith. I watched things like Clerks and Mallrats and Chasing Amy and Dogma, etc. And I noticed this guy popping up in a bunch of these movies. His name was Jason Lee. He was funny, he was charming, he had great screen presence, and I grew up watching him in more and more things like Alvin and the Chipmunks and My Name is Earl. And as I entered my early 20s, I figured, hey, why not learn a little bit more about this guy? And I found out that he was a former skateboarder and a present-day photographer. Not only that, but he was a guy who lived a rich and fascinating life full of twists and turns. So today, I want to take some time to talk about Jason Lee. Jason Lee was born in April of 1970 and grew up in Huntington Beach, California. As a teenager, he became interested in skateboarding and began competing in amateur contests. By the late 1980s, he had turned pro and was traveling the world as a sponsored skateboarder. Here he is featured in the infamous skate video, Video Days, directed by none other than Spike Jonze.
Dude, I'll give you $100 and I'll take out the Benny Hondas if you slide that 75-foot handrail. I'll give you 600 tries. I'll be back next week. Lit.
After taking some minor acting roles, including the music video for the Sonic Youth single 100%, Jason Lee left professional skateboarding for a full-time acting career. His first major movie role was in Kevin Smith's Mallrats, which became a cult classic hit.
Oh my God. Holy shit!
One day he was on a movie set and he looked up and he saw the big Panavision 35mm camera. And he was like, oh yeah, shit, I love cameras. I haven't really thought about them in a while. He was so focused on not wanting to be a shitty actor that he wasn't really paying attention to what was going on around him. And that one day in 2002, he looked at that big Panavision camera and he thought, this is beautiful. And he started talking to some of the crew members. And he said, hey, what kind of film are you using? And what's that light called? And why does that light have a blue gel on it? Why does that one have an orange gel on it? And he just totally immersed himself. And on one of his days off, he bought a Bolex 16mm camera, as well as a Mamiya RZ7 medium format camera, and he dove in, and he never looked back. He became enamored with the American photo road trip. The idea of documenting his travels, of seeing parts of the country that were largely unnoticed. He feels connected to the romanticized rural American landscape. In his photos, you'll see derelict abandoned homes in open dry fields, and dusty expanses of winding roads. In one interview, he said, the camera has basically just replaced the skateboard. Instead of looking for a forgotten locale to skate, he's looking for a secluded piece of America where he can set up his camera and capture it on celluloid. His photographs are also inspired by a lot of films that he loves. Films like Paris, Texas, Terrence Malick's Badlands, and David Byrne's True Stories. He said once that Badlands was made in the 1970s. Paris, Texas was made in 1984. You can roam these parts of America, and much of it feels the same. And the story and the landscape, I think, kind of just keeps telling the same story generationally. What he's doing is he's looking for odd things. He's looking for things that stand out because they seem like maybe they shouldn't be there. He takes pride in the fact that perhaps he's noticing something that the locals aren't noticing, that he's seeing some kind of humor in it, some kind of value in it. When he sees something older, it resonates with him, not just because it's nostalgic. It's more that it's strange. He told a story about his dad once. He called his dad on the phone, and his dad said that he knew some friends a long time ago who put a television on the curb with a sign that said free on it. And nobody took it. So eventually, what they did was they turned the sign around and they wrote television $50. And somebody stole it because value had been placed on it. And that story got him thinking a lot about why all this abandoned and forgotten stuff is still standing around. And it's because that nobody has placed any value on it. and it's just an everyday, ordinary, plain view. He views these things as being beautiful, even the odd or weird or kind of funny, and so he documents it because it's out there. Or he gives photographic notice to these things that he thinks he can give some value to, so that other people can hopefully value those things as well. He said in one of the documentaries, "That's the beauty of art, cinema, and photography for me. I am probably most inspired when I'm driving around and discovering new places, even if it's only a photograph of an old gas station. There's something about the entire experience that's invigorating, and at the very least I get to say I've been there." In 2018, he published A Plain View, his second book of selected photographs from an ongoing documentation of America that began in California in 2006, featuring 111 photographs made throughout Texas between January and April 2017 with 4x5 color films. He was commissioned by Tulsa's Philbrook Museum of Art to make OK, a collection of photographs made throughout Oklahoma between June and November of 2018 with 35mm, 120, and 4x5 color and black and white films. In December 2020, British publishing house Stanley Barker released In the Gold Dust Rush, consisting of 12 years' worth of photographs, 84 black and white images, all taken during Jason Lee's travels across America, places that had seemingly fallen between the cracks. In 2021, Lee released Galveston, commissioned by the Galveston Historical Foundation, featuring 98 photographs made on the island of Galveston, Texas, in November of 2020, with 4x5 and 35mm color and black and white films. I'm as fascinated with Jason Lee as a person and as a figure as much as I am fascinated by his photography. His life has had so many twists and turns, from skateboarder to Hollywood actor to business owner to photographer. I think the thing that I relate to the most is his style and this prevailing sense of trying to capture every town America. I got my start in film photography when I was working for this reality TV show, and they had me flying all across the country, places like California, Ohio, Mississippi, Atlanta. And I was staying in these parts of America that I would otherwise have never seen. So I started bringing an SLR with me every time and just trying to capture whatever I could. I was seeing these things that Jason Lee describes, these parts of America that are almost forgotten or just deeply tucked away. And I started documenting them, not even certain that there were others who found value in these sorts of things the way that I did. And lo and behold, I discover someone like Jason Lee, a guy who I already respected and admired. And I find that he has similar thoughts and feelings toward every town America. Watching videos of him talking about photography, his passion is on full display, and it's something that I can fully relate to. The freedom of being on the road with little more than a camera and a wandering eye is, I'm sure, the dream for many of us photographers out there, many of you watching this video. And I know that feeling. I got to experience it very briefly. And there's a moment in one of the short documentaries I watched where he says the simplest thing, but it resonated with me because it was almost like the essence of why I do what I do. He said, "Man, those clouds are something special." I suggest that anyone out there check out Jason Lee's work, listen to him talk about photography, and maybe it'll inspire you to go on that road trip that you've been putting off. Or it will force you to look at your surroundings with a different perspective. As someone who feels like I can get stuck with the same old perspective, sometimes I need people like Jason Lee to break me out of that cycle. I think I'm going to go take some photos. Feeling like I should go for a walk. I'm going to leave you all with some of Jason Lee's work. There are links in the description where you could find more information about Jason Lee. You could look at some of his photographs. You could see some videos of him skating. That's always really cool. And yeah, I'm gonna go for a walk. And I'll see you all next time.